Good morning, everyone. I have to send apologies. There's been a bit of an upheaval here, and the list which we would have with all the names for the dedications, I cannot currently find. So if you want to put in the chat box the names of anyone for me to dedicate, then I will. We'll start off. So put the names in the chat box now, and then I'll do dedications. And please God, it will turn up by the next time we meet. In the meantime, we dedicate it in memory of Leah Bas Feivel, Fruma Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Yirmiyahu Yechiel Ben Achav and Moshe Eliezer, and anyone else who you put in the box, I will dedicate. So we were discussing the last time we met, and the good thing about being online is, as you can imagine, there is a lot of discussion at the moment as to whether shuls and places of worship will continue to stay open. In all likelihood, after the Xmas period, then we will see them close. But watch this space. Don't quote me on it. It's just my prediction. But in the meantime, the good news is that we will be able to continue seamlessly online. I should point out that next week will be at 9:30. Next week during the holiday period will be 9:30, and the reason for 9:30 is because everything next week is 9:30. Is 8:30 the services, and therefore we're going to do 9:30. I don't know if there will be services or not, but next week will be 9:30. We'll put a note out. Okay, Sarah Malka Bas Binyamin, thank you for the name. So we were discussing about what it means to be a Jew. This is the question that Rabbi Sachs grapples with in the first of his 10 pathways, right? And we mentioned about the description of what it means to be a Jew last time. The fact that we are described on the one hand as being like the stars in heavens. On the other hand, we're described like the dust of the earth, like the sand on the seashore. And we asked and we discussed, you may recall, a couple of days ago, as to what exactly is the significance and the symbolism of us being like the stars and like the dust and like the sand. Today we want to move on. There is another description of the Jewish people that we are all familiar with, and often it is a source of contention, envy, jealousy, and even wars. And that is the words that are used in the Torah explicitly, Am Segula. You're meant to be Liot Am Segula. You're meant to be some say it means a chosen nation. Rav Hirsch describes it as a treasured nation. Rav Sachs asks, what is the same or the difference between being chosen and being treasured? If we take the Rav Hirsch translation, if we are something that's treasured, does that mean exclusivity? Does that mean elitism? Does that mean that we see ourselves or lord ourselves over others? Right? Is that a racist statement to call yourselves the chosen people? These are all questions that have been dealt with, and I want to hear your views. So that's question number one. What does it mean to be chosen? What does it mean to be treasured? And does the fact that we are referred to as chosen, quote, treasured, does that mean that Judaism and being Jewish means inherently that we are discriminatory, we are racist? Let us think about that for a minute. We'll come back to it. So there is another description of the Jewish people that we already have touched upon, and that is Va'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim v'goy kodesh. If I had a pound for every time that I spoke about this concept and this particular phrase, I would be a very, very wealthy person indeed. Maybe not Jeff Bezos, but not far off it. And the idea is that we are challenged. We are called to be a nation of priests, mamleches kohanim, a nation of priests, v'goy kodesh, and a holy nation. And the question, obviously, is what does that mean? What does it mean to be a nation of priests? Most of us are not Kohanim. My father wasn't a Kohen. My grandfather wasn't a Kohen. So it's highly unlikely that I'm ever going to make it to being a Kohen. So what does it mean to be a priest? And then we find that we're meant to be a holy nation, right? Well, besides eating bagels, I guess that's one form of holiness with a whole. But the question is, what exactly does it mean to be a holy nation? We know that the verses of the Torah describe about the fact that despite the fact that we are devoid of power, we are the splendor and grandeur that we once had doesn't really exist anymore, yet the Jewish people, we are told, have survived. So what exactly is it that has survived? I think all these questions, you'll be delighted to know, all tie in together very beautifully. Let me share with you my thoughts, and then we'll share with you a little poem. Well, I'm not going to say the poem, I'm just going to refer to it, but there's a poem that you're all familiar with. So the idea is that we are meant to be God's representatives in the world. That's what it really means to be Jewish. Mamleches Kohanim, a Kohen is somebody that stands at the front on Yom Tov, on the festival, and represents, is the conduit for God's blessing to come into this world. They represent the Jewish people, but they are also the conduit between us and God. And therefore, that is very much the way the Jewish people are meant to be. We're meant to be a nation of priests. We're meant to be God's representatives in the world. Now, how are we meant to be God's representatives? We don't go around with our calling card saying, here, I'm God's representative. But rather, good morning to everyone that are joining us. Rather, being a God's representative, it means that when people see us, they see us as being representative of God. We are godly. We act in a transcendent way beyond our the physical realm. And therefore, people, when they see us as a reminder, as a call to hopefully raise the bar, raise their level, and act in a more godly fashion. And therefore, when we do so, that is when we are acting as a nation of priests. And it can be anywhere and everywhere in life. You could be in the office, you could be walking your dog, you could be at home, you could be anywhere in society. We are, whether we like it or not, people see us as being Jewish first and foremost. When they look at us, despite whatever name changes, whatever changes we make to our dress, right, or to our accents, to our intonation, people know sooner or later they find out that we are Jewish. And as soon as they do, whether we like it or not, they see us first and foremost as Jews. And therefore, they expect from us more, whether we like it or not. So we go back to what we were discussing previously, and we try to tie the two together. So it's interesting that we mentioned the fact that we are like the stars in the heavens and the dust and the earth. In other words, that we are able to reach, hopefully to enlighten the world with the light from our stars, as us as the stars on the one hand. On the other hand, yes, we have suffered tremendously physical persecution and so much more that our nation has gone through, but the dust still survives. That is one idea. The other idea, and that of course represents, it also ties in with the seashore, right? You have the sand, which is another representation of the Jewish people. The sea always comes crashing down. I just watched a video of one of the best surfers in the world. The sea comes crashing down on the beach, and yet we think the sand has disappeared. The sea then rolls back, and there is the sand. It stays the test of time. And that is what the Jewish people are about. And how do we do so? There's a wonderful poem, which you're all familiar with, which is called, I think, Footprints in the Sand. And there is a tremendous dispute, in fact, that's been in the law courts as to who was the author of Footprints in the Sand. I'm sure you're all familiar with the poem. Basically, it's a story of someone who's walking along, and they notice that there's 4 footprints in the sand, and then they notice that it goes down to 2 footprints in the sand, and they wonder, or this kid wonders, where the other footprints, if it's meant to be the person and God. So they said, well, where were you? When I needed you, where were you? It was just 2 footprints. And God said, that was when it got difficult for you. That is when I carried you. That's what the 2 footprints represent, that God is carrying us throughout the course of the most greatest challenges that we face in history. I don't know how people live without faith, honestly, because to be alone, not to know that there is some purpose, some meaning, and something that is carrying us forward, I think is a very, very lonely, insecure existence. So the way we behave, the way we conduct ourselves is all about what it means to be Jewish, right? So yes, there are the achievements that people have made, the contribution we have made to society. But the greatest contribution that we make as Jews, it doesn't take a gong, it doesn't take a Nobel Prize, right? But what it does take is to us to behave and to conduct ourselves every second of every day in the way that we can, in the way that we should, in the way that we are expected to. And in that way, we make this world a bit more godly, a bit holier, a bit more sanctified. We elevate it. And people are craving that elevation, waiting for the Jewish people to show them the way, to be that nation of priests, to lead us, to show them how we can manage to come through this with our dignity intact, with our faith intact, focusing on other people rather than just becoming more and more insular and worried about our own selves. I think it's a very timely message as we find ourselves, without doubt, in challenging circumstances. But we should bear in mind we've been there before, and we've always managed, like the sand on the seashore, to survive. And the dust, which is also another comparison of the Jewish people, covers up whatever's underneath it. And we think about the Romans and the Greeks, the Babylonians, as Mark Twain says, they were here and they've gone, and the Jewish people have survived. And how have we survived? We have survived because of a covenant and a promise between us and God, that God said, you're my chosen people, and I will make sure that you survive the course of time. But how have we not just survived, but thrived? The Jewish people, we as a nation and as individuals, do best when we are able to have faith and to overcome adversity, to put our faith in God and to be able to know that He will carry us through whatever challenges, whatever we face, be it in our personal lives or in our lives as a nation and as part of this great world. We're going to stop there, and I am going to now recite Nichtam LeDavid. If I could have that text, it would also be wonderful. It's one of those days. I don't think I even have that text. I had to move offices yesterday, and I'm afraid everything has been thrown up into the air. Okay, so we'll do a memorial prayer. We'll come back to it. Adonai Olamim Zachares Nishmais Shalchu Olamam. Do some of the names. Let's just do some of the names that are here. From a Shoshana bus by Leah Shoshana bus from Leah Shoshana Bas Bible from a Shoshana bus Yaakov Shmuel Yom Yechiel Ben Moshe Eliezer Ramaka Bas Ben Yomin Shalchu Olamam Baganei Teimu Chosam Melachim Belarachamim Yasem Esetzkan Afopli Olamim Yeshavas Raitsish Masamanai Nachlasam Yanuchu B'Shalom Shkavam V'Namar Amen. Mishabach Avaseinu Avram Yisrael Yaakov Moshe Aaron David Shlomo Yivarach B'Zacholim Bavu Shana Mispalim Bavu Ram B'Spezakosh Baruch Hu Yimol Rachim Aleichem Lachmal Lefosam Yishlach Lem Fushlim Shmaim L'Cholavem V'Soch Shachol Yisrael Refuas HaNefesh Refuas HaGuf Hashabach Zman Karev V'Namar Amen. The greatest contribution that we can make, remember, it's not in the big things. The great moments of inspiration, like the giving of the Torah, divine revelation, splitting of the sea, miracles in Egypt, they were one-offs. They came and they went. We have moments in our lives very much like that, right? Moments of greatness, moments of inspiration, but we can come crashing down after that if we don't internalize those moments of inspiration, and if we're not able to carry on revealing God, not in the big things, but in the little things of life. And it is the way that we behave, the way that we react to any given situation. So please God, we should be able to keep it up, keep our faith, keep strong in the current situations, whatever happens with restrictions. Please God, we will be back next Sunday at the usual time. I think it's 9:30 Sunday, and then the next week, throughout the week, will be 9:30. Okay, so looking forward. There'll be the burst of inspiration tonight. Keep safe, keep well, look after yourselves, and wishing everyone well in these challenging times. All the very best. We move on to the next of the 10 paths, which I think is prayer. We'll do that next week, following in the great footsteps of Rabbi Sachs, Zichrono Livracha.